First Contact and the Ancient War. The vastness of space stretched before the U.S. Star Destroyer as it emerged from the experimental quantum fold drive. Captain Noah Reed stood on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of distant stars and the holographic displays surrounding him. At 45, Reed had spent more than half his life exploring the frontiers of space, but nothing had prepared him for what they now faced. "Quantum fold complete, Captain," announced Lieutenant Maya Chen, her fingers dancing across the navigation console. "We've arrived at the coordinates." "Status report," Reed commanded, his deep voice steady despite the tension that filled the bridge. Commander Eli Torres, Reed's second-in-command, frowned at his readings. "All systems operational, but—" He paused, adjusting several settings. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures unlike anything we've ever encountered. The scale is astronomical." Reed was about to respond when the main view screen erupted with light. Streaks of emerald energy crisscrossed with beams of darkness that seemed to devour the very stars. Explosions bloomed across space like deadly flowers, each capable of consuming an entire planet. "My God," whispered Dr. Amara Okafor, the ship's chief scientist. "We've stumbled into a war zone." As if confirming her words, the ship's AI, Araya, materialized as a shimmering blue hologram. "Captain, I am detecting two distinct civilizations engaged in conflict. Based on energy readings and battle patterns, this conflict has been ongoing for approximately 800,000 Earth years." The bridge fell silent as the crew attempted to process this information. 800,000 years. Reed finally said, "That's longer than modern humans have existed." "Correct," Araya replied. "And the technology being deployed exceeds humanity's current capabilities by several orders of magnitude." Before Reed could issue orders, the ship shuddered violently. "We're being scanned," Torres called out. "Multiple vessels approaching at high velocity." "Shields up," Reed commanded. "Defensive posture only. We're explorers, not combatants." The view screen shifted, revealing a being unlike anything any of them had ever seen. It appeared to be composed of pure light, its form constantly shifting, yet maintaining a vaguely humanoid shape. When it spoke, its voice resonated directly in their minds. "Humans," the being said, the word carrying undertones of curiosity and wariness. "You have entered the eternal conflict. I am Solaris of the Luminal Collective. Your presence was unexpected." Reed stepped forward. "I am Captain Noah Reed of the United Earth Ship Star Destroyer. We are peaceful explorers who encountered your battle by chance. We mean no harm." The light being seemed to consider this, perhaps not by intention, but harm may follow nonetheless. "The Voidborn will have detected your arrival as well." As if summoned by these words, the view screen split to reveal a second entity, this one appearing as a moving absence of light, a darkness deeper than the void of space itself, with pinpricks of distant stars visible through its shadowy form. A new player enters the game. The shadow being's voice slithered through their minds like ice water. "How intriguing. I am Nyx of the Voidborn Dominion. Your species is young, fragile, delicious in its naivety." Reed maintained his composure despite the chill that ran down his spine. "We have no quarrel with either of your civilizations. We simply seek to understand." A sound like dark laughter emanated from Nyx. "Understanding is the beginning of ending, little human. For 800 millennia, we have danced this dance with the luminals. What could your infant species possibly comprehend? Perhaps our youth gives us perspective you both lack," Reed replied boldly. "After 800,000 years, neither side has prevailed. Have you considered that the conflict itself might be flawed?" Silence followed his words, a silence that seemed to stretch across the cosmos. Finally, Solaris spoke again. "You speak with surprising wisdom for one so young. Perhaps there is value in your perspective. Will you come to our nexus to discuss further?" "Do not be deceived," Nyx countered immediately. "The luminals seek only the proliferation of chaotic expansion. the undisciplined growth that will eventually consume all order and balance. Hear our truth before you decide. Reed exchanged glances with his senior officers before responding. We will hear both sides. Perhaps that's something neither of you have truly done in 800,000 years. The Star Destroyer found itself escorted by vessels from both civilizations, keeping a careful distance from each other as they traveled deeper into the conflict zone. Dr. Okafor and her team worked frantically to analyze the data pouring in from their sensors. This is extraordinary, she told Reed in the ship's conference room, where the senior staff had gathered. The Luminals and Voidborn represent fundamentally opposing cosmic principles. The Luminals embody creation, expansion, and complexity. The Voidborn represent entropy, contraction, and simplification. You're saying they're fighting over the fundamental nature of the universe? Torres asked incredulously. Not exactly, Dr. Okafor clarified. They're fighting over its fate. The Luminals believe in continuous expansion and creation, new stars, new life, new possibilities forever. The Voidborn believe in the eventual heat death of the universe, a natural progression toward perfect entropy and stillness. Reed frowned. So this is essentially a philosophical war. Philosophy backed by enough firepower to reshape galaxies, Dr. Okafor said grimly. Based on our readings, thousands of civilizations have been caught in the crossfire over the centuries. Entire species extinguished because they were in the wrong place or chose the wrong side. Lieutenant Chen looked up from her datapad. The Luminal Nexus and the Voidborn Sanctum are sending us coordinates. They're essentially their command centers, located on opposite sides of this star system. And they both want us to visit. Reed confirmed. Yes, sir. Chen nodded. Separately, of course. Reed stood and paced the length of the conference table. In 800,000 years, neither side has been able to defeat the other. There's a balance here, a stalemate that's cost countless lives and worlds. He stopped, looking at each of his officers. But we represent something they haven't encountered before, a completely outside perspective. Captain, Araya interjected, her hologram appearing at the table. I've been analyzing the quantum signatures of both civilizations. There's something unusual about their fundamental structure. They exist in quantum-locked states, the Luminals locked in a state of constant possibility, and the Voidborn in a state of singular determinism. Dr. Okafor's eyes widened. That's why they can't defeat each other. They're quantum opposites, like trying to simultaneously observe a particle's position and momentum. And where do we fit in? Torres asked. Reed's expression shifted as understanding dawned. We're neither. Humans exist in a state of quantum flux. We can collapse or expand quantum states through observation and interaction. He turned to Araya. What would happen if we introduced human quantum consciousness into their conflict? The AI's hologram flickered as calculations ran. Unknown, Captain. But the potential for disruption is significant. Reed nodded slowly. Lieutenant Chen, plot a course for the Luminal Nexus first, then the Voidborn Sanctum. Dr. Okafor, I want everything you can give me on quantum consciousness and how it might interact with these beings. Commander Torres, prepare the ship for potential combat scenarios. Defensive measures only. As the Star Destroyer approached the crystalline structure that served as the Luminal Nexus, Reed couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had stumbled into something far greater than a mere war. This was a conflict about the fundamental nature of existence itself, and somehow, humanity now held the key to its resolution. Solaris greeted them within the Nexus, a vast chamber of light and geometry that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. The beam's luminous form coalesced into something more defined, more comprehensible to human perception. For 800 millennia, we have fought to preserve the light of creation against the encroaching void, Solaris explained. The Voidborn would reduce all existence to a single state, cold, dark, unchanging. We fight for diversity, for possibility, for the continuation of life itself. And yet, Reed countered, in fighting this war, how many civilizations have been destroyed? How many possibilities extinguished? Solaris dimmed slightly. Sacrifices in service of the greater good. The loss of some possibilities to preserve possibility itself. There's a contradiction in your methods. Reed pressed. You fight for diversity yet demand alignment. For possibility, yet pursue a single outcome. Before Solaris could respond, the Nexus trembled. Alarms echoed through the crystalline structure. The Voidborn attack, Solaris announced, its form expanding in agitation. They must have detected your unusual quantum signature. They fear what you represent. The Star Destroyer shuddered as energy weapons impacted nearby. Reed tapped his communicator. Torres, status report. Massive Voidborn fleet approaching. Captain, Torres responded, his voice tense. They're targeting both us and the Nexus. The Luminals are mobilizing in defense. Reed turned to Solaris. This war has gone on long enough. We came seeking understanding, but perhaps what you both need is resolution. What do you propose, human? Solaris asked, its light pulsing with curiosity. Reed's eyes reflected the determination that had carried humanity to the stars. Something neither of you has tried in 800,000 years. Synthesis instead of opposition. But first, we need to visit the Voidborn. Solaris flickered with what might have been uncertainty. They will not listen. They cannot comprehend anything but the inexorable march toward entropy. Perhaps, Reed acknowledged, but humans have a unique talent for changing the rules of engagement. And right now, that might be exactly what this ancient war needs. As the Star Destroyer broke away from the Nexus, accelerating toward the darkness of the Voidborn sanctum, Reed knew they were racing against time. The fate of not just humanity, but potentially all life in the galaxy, would be determined by what happened in the next 50 minutes. The human element. The Voidborn sanctum existed as a perfect opposite to the luminal nexus, a region of space where darkness had physical form and silence carried weight. The U.S. Star Destroyer approached cautiously, its systems struggling to maintain normal operations in the presence of such concentrated anti-energy. Shields at 60% and falling, Commander Torres reported. Whatever this place is, it's actively hostile to our technology. Captain Reed nodded grimly. Dr. Okafor, status of the quantum consciousness integration. The chief scientist looked up from her console, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. The luminals provided crucial insights. We've modified the quantum fold drive to broadcast human consciousness patterns rather than simply move the ship through spacetime. And the potential effects. Reed pressed. In theory, Okafor explained, it could disrupt the quantum-locked states of both the luminals and Voidborn, forcing them into a state of superposition rather than rigid opposition. In practice, Torres asked skeptically. Okafor shrugged. Either we create a new paradigm that ends an 800,000-year war, or we trigger a quantum cascade that destroys reality as we know it. Comforting, Torres muttered. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the shadowy form of Nyx. Unlike their previous encounter, the Voidborn entity seemed more focused, more defined in its darkness. You have been corrupted by luminal deception, Nyx stated, its voice a cold whisper in their minds. Yet still you come, curious. Reed stepped forward. We come seeking understanding, as promised. Understanding requires perspective, Nyx replied. Allow me to provide it. The darkness surrounding the ship seemed to deepen, and suddenly the bridge crew found themselves experiencing visions, stars exploding into supernovae, galaxies colliding, civilizations rising and falling in the blink of an eye. All things end. Nyx continued as the visions flowed. The luminals fight against the inevitable. They would prolong suffering by extending existence beyond its natural conclusion. We offer the mercy of finality, of perfect rest. Reed struggled against the overwhelming sensations. There's more to existence than just its beginning and end. There's meaning in the journey itself. A comforting fiction told by finite beings, Nyx dismissed. The journey, as you call it, is merely the slow decay from order to disorder. We simply hasten the process. If that's true, Reed challenged, then why has this war lasted 800,000 years? If entropy is inevitable, the luminals should have fallen long ago. A ripple passed through Nyx's shadowy form, the void-born equivalent of surprise. They resist the natural order with unnatural persistence. Or perhaps, Reed suggested, the natural order is more complex than either of you recognize. Perhaps creation and entropy are not opponents but partners in a greater cycle. Before Nyx could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Lieutenant Chen's voice was tight with urgency. Captain, massive luminal fleet approaching. They're engaging the void-born defenses. The sanctum trembled as energy weapons impacted its dark surface. Nyx's form expanded in what might have been anger. Treachery. You distracted us while they prepared their attack. This wasn't our doing, Reed insisted, but it presents an opportunity. The time for talk is ending. Now we must act. Reed turned to his crew. Return to the ship immediately. Prepare the modified quantum fold drive. We have less than 30 minutes to implement our plan. Back aboard the Star Destroyer, Reed gathered his senior officers on the bridge. Outside, the space battle had escalated to unprecedented levels, with weapons fire lighting up the darkness of space. "Era," Reed called to the ship's eye. Tactical assessment. The holographic woman appeared, her expression grave. Both fleets are fully engaged, Captain. Energy readings suggest they're deploying weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. Civilian worlds in 3 adjacent sectors are already reporting catastrophic damage. Reed's jaw tightened. Then we proceed as planned. Dr. Okafor, is the modified drive ready? Yes, Captain, but I must emphasize the experimental nature off. Noted, Doctor, Reed interrupted. But we're out of alternatives and out of time. He turned to Torres. Position us at these coordinates, directly between the main fleets. Torres's eyes widened. Sir, that's suicide. We'll be caught in crossfire from both sides. Precisely, Reed nodded. We need both civilizations focused on us for this to work. As the Star Destroyer maneuvered into position, taking multiple hits that further weakened its shields, Reed opened a channel to both the Luminals and Voidborn. This is Captain Noah Reed of the U.S. Star Destroyer. Your war has raged for 800,000 years, devastating countless innocent civilizations in its wake. Today, it ends. Solaris and Nyx both appeared on split screens. You cannot stop what has been in motion since before your species evolved. Human, Nyx stated coldly. Your bravery is admirable, but misplaced, Solaris added, its light pulsing. This conflict transcends your understanding. Reed stood tall, unflinching. Perhaps what this conflict truly needs is something neither of you possess: humanity. With that, Reed gave the command, activate the modified quantum fold drive. Dr. Okafor initiated the sequence, and the ship began to vibrate as the drive powered up. Quantum consciousness field expanding, she reported. 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Where the field touched luminal and void-born ships alike, their very nature seemed to waver. Light beings flickered between brilliance and shadow. Void entities solidified then, dispersed in rapid succession. What is happening? Solaris demanded, its form destabilizing. Impossible, Nyx hissed, its darkness rippling with distortion. Reed watched with grim satisfaction. We're introducing a third state to your binary war. Humanity exists in quantum flux, neither locked in endless possibility like the luminals, nor fixed in deterministic entropy like the voidborn. We change, we adapt, we evolve. The quantum consciousness field is approaching critical mass, Okafor warned. Containment at 30% and falling. Hold position, Reed ordered. Expand the field to maximum range. The effect spread throughout both fleets, creating a cascade of quantum disruption. Ships from both sides began to change, taking on aspects of their enemies while retaining elements of themselves. You're forcing us into harmony, Solaris's voice was incredulous. Not harmony, Reed corrected. Complementarity. You can't exist without each other. Creation requires the potential for entropy. Entropy depends on prior creation. You're not enemies. You're two halves of a cosmic whole. The ship shuddered violently as the drive strained beyond its limits. Captain, we can't maintain this field much longer, Torres warned. The drive is approaching critical overload. Reed nodded. We've done enough. Prepare for emergency quantum fold. Get us clear of the battlefield. Where to, sir? Chen asked, hands poised over the navigation controls. Reed looked at the transformation spreading throughout both fleets. Luminal ships now carried streaks of darkness. Voidborn vessels glowed with inner light. Anywhere but here, Lieutenant. Our work is done. Just as the quantum fold drive initiated its emergency sequence, the ship was struck by simultaneous weapons fire from both sides. The bridge erupted in sparks and smoke as systems overloaded. Fold sequence compromised. Chen shouted over the alarms. Drive stability at critical levels. The last thing Reed saw before consciousness faded was the spectacle of luminal and voidborn ships no longer firing at each other, but instead turning their attention to a new phenomenon forming at the center of the battlefield. A swirling vortex of light and darkness, perfectly balanced. Reed awoke in the ship's medical bay to find Dr. Okafor standing over him, a relieved smile on her tired face. "Welcome back, Captain," she said. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." Reed struggled to sit up. The ship, the crew, mostly intact, she assured him. "We took heavy damage, but Torres got us into an emergency fold before the drive could overload completely. We're currently orbiting an uninhabited planet about 10 light years from the battlefield." "And the war?" Reed asked, his voice hoarse. Okafor's smile widened. "That's the truly remarkable part. It's over, Captain. After 800,000 years, it ended in the 50 minutes we were there." She helped Reed to his feet and led him to a viewport. Outside, a magnificent sight awaited. Ships of both luminal and voidborn design, now all bearing elements of both light and darkness, hung in formation around the Star Destroyer. "They've been waiting for you to recover," Okafor explained. "Their representatives are ready to speak with you when you're able." In the ship's conference room, Reed found himself facing a single entity, neither purely luminal nor voidborn, but a balanced synthesis of both. It introduced itself as Equilibrium, the first of a new consciousness born from the forced quantum superposition. "For 800,000 years, we existed in opposition, each side unable to comprehend the necessity of the other," Equilibrium explained, its voice harmonious where its predecessors had been discordant. "Your intervention forced us to experience each other's perspective, to understand that creation and entropy are not enemies but partners in the cosmic dance." "The war is truly over?" Reed asked cautiously. "More than over," Equilibrium confirmed. "Transformed. Where once we fought over which principle should govern the universe, we now understand that both must exist in balance. Creation without eventual entropy becomes cancerous. Entropy without new creation leads to eternal emptiness. And the civilizations caught in your crossfire." Reed pressed. "We have much to atone for," Equilibrium acknowledged. "Rebuilding will take time, but we now have the wisdom to guide rather than dominate, to nurture the diversity of the cosmos rather than force it into a single pattern." Reed nodded slowly. "And humanity? What is our role in this new galactic order?" Equilibrium's form shifted, light and darkness flowing in perfect harmony. "You are the bridge builders, the mediators between extremes. Your quantum flux consciousness allows you to comprehend opposing perspectives in ways we never could. The galaxy will need this gift as it heals from our war." As the Star Destroyer began its long journey back to Earth, Reed stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak by. In 50 minutes, humanity had ended an 800,000-year war not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through their uniquely human ability to embrace contradiction, to exist in quantum superposition between opposing absolutes. Set course for home, Lieutenant Chen. Reed ordered, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. We have quite a report to deliver. Behind them, throughout the galaxy, worlds that had known only war for millennia witnessed their first sunrise of peace, all because a single human warship had dared to change the rules of an ancient game.